You have the floor.
Thank you. My message of this afternoon in this debate, Mr. President, is clear. We have indeed to work together in this Parliament, and I think that we cannot waste time, and that 2 weeks after the attacks on Charlie Hebdo, we must make a leap forward, and we must conclude, I think, in the European Union on a broad and ambitious package to tackle terrorism, and that we have to do it as Parliament together with the Commission and together with the Council, because it's a common task and it's a common goal to reach. In fact, what we have to do, if you allow me, is to repeat what happened after 9/11. After 9/11, in 2001, at that time, besides other measures, we decided also on a package, and we created the European arrest warrant, which was at that time a dramatic change in Europe, because before, to have the extradition of a suspect, it took years. Sometimes to have somebody from the UK to bring him to France, it took 10 years to do it. While since we have the European arrest warrant, today, it takes days to transfer somebody, a suspect of a criminal, from one country to another. And so I think that we need to have the same level of ambition now, not to do the same things because the threats have changed, but to have a same package to strengthen our security in Europe. And I think there are two things at our stake. First of all, a common capacity to analyze the information and the risk, because that is lacking in Europe, because in all major terrorist attacks, Mr. Kirkhope, over the past 10 years, the perpetrators were known by the services of the different countries. And the problem is today not so much that we don't collect the info, the problem is that we don't share the info between our services in Europe. That's the main problem. And I know that, so what we have to do is to create what we call an Euro Intel, sharing information, common risk sharing, common analysis of the risks that are at stake. And I know I had already today a number of people say it's not possible. Article 4 of the treaty. Well, I can tell you, in the last period, we have changed twice the treaty. Once to have 18 members of parliament more, and a second time to change to have it possible to ESM, to save the banks. Well, if it is possible to change the treaty on a fast-track procedure to save the banks, it has to be possible to change the treaty to increase the security of the citizens of Europe here in this European Union. And secondly, we have not to make the error of the nationalist and the populist, that is to say, oh, the problem is Schengen. The problem is not Schengen. The problem is that we are not solidar between ourselves to strengthen the outside borders of the Schengen area instead of re-entering internal borders. And finally, on PNR, I want to say one thing, because Mr. Kirkhope has spoken of that. We are in favor of a European PNR system, but it has to go together, Mr. Kirkhope, with guarantees, with the protection of data and privacy. Well, because I think it's very clear that Mr. Pittella has right. It's safety and freedom at the same time. And finally, a last sentence, Mr. President, about the targets here in this debate, And that is, you cannot abuse the death of Charlie Hebdo like some are doing here in this Parliament. Mrs. Le Pen, Mr. Farage. It's not about a war between civilizations and religions. It's about a war against criminals and terrorists. And that makes the whole difference.